Finally, the Daily Wrestling News Show is back on the air. We're back from a 6-day trip to Chicago where we watched 88 live wrestling matches and witnessed some incredible moments like the debut of Daniel Bryan, Ruby Soho, and Adam Cole, baby. A 60-minute Broadway. We even had the crowning of Jon Moxley as the new GCW champion. I'm Ryan Joy, and I run minutestobelltime.com, a website and database tracking pro wrestling from around the world. On today's show, we're talking about our crazy trip to Chicago in segment 1. Travis Severance is in the house. We're going to talk about the G1 Climax in segment 2. And this is the Daily Wrestling News Show for September 7th, 2021, where we sort through all the bullshit in wrestling news to find you the truth. And Travis, as Nick Gage would say, where my gang at? Where my mother effing gang at?
Nick Gage, right? Gosh, what a 6 days of wrestling. Like, and as a lunatic, of course, I got home, unpacked everything, did my laundry, and went right to watching All Out again because I wanted to hear the commentary. So, add another pile to that 88 in the last 6 days, and that's where we're at. So I guess we're pretty hardcore.
We're hardcore. We're hardcore.
Exactly. Yes.
So, I mean, the main story right away. Adam Cole, Daniel Bryan, Ruby Soho, Minoru Suzuki, whatever. Tons of debuts at the main show. New tag team champions. Let's talk about the debuts first. I think that's the hot story, right? I mean,
sure.
Let's not bury the lead here.
Yep.
Adam Cole, part of the Elite. Daniel Bryan against the Elite. What does this do? I mean, you said as we were leaving that you felt like this was a shifting moment in the industry.
So it's, it is rare when you can look at a moment in wrestling and be able to snip it out and say, this is a historic moment. And it's not exactly Bash at the Beach NWO forming, because that was a very big moment. It's certainly not the Slam. But what this does is it's all about momentum. And it's really, really difficult right now to not say that AEW has a ton of momentum. I'm not going to say ever that AEW is going to get itself to the point where it's successful and it's beating WWE the way that WCW had for a long period of time, because I'm not sure there's that many eyeballs that are out there that are watching the product in a traditional sense. So we'll never be able to count those numbers or anything like that. But boy, this is pushing the needle about as hard as you can possibly push it. We had talked about them looking at slowing down some of these debuts, like they should use it each episode to build a pop. I have to say, number one, they wanted to come out of this pay-per-view huge, and it's impossible to say that they didn't. Number two, they've got to have the stories ready to tell, because otherwise you do that. Otherwise you save Arthur Ashe for something like that. But I think what happened was there was enough rumblings out there and grumblings out there that, like, you can only get eyeballs long enough on that stuff and that dirt sheet conversation and talk, and then it fades like everything else. It's literally yesterday's news. Okay, there's the speculation and stuff like that, but none of these people that we saw were going to be as big as Punk. You'll probably never have that ever again. So yeah, their momentum is so solid and so strong right now. But the story's got to be there to tell.
I was one of those people who said, save Daniel Bryan, save Adam Cole, make a big event out of each one of them the way they did Punk. And I think I was wrong, because what I realized after the fact, listening into some other podcasts and news shows and stuff like that, is that there were a lot of people watching this pay-per-view as the first AEW thing they had ever seen. They didn't even watch Dynamite or Rampage from Chicago on Wednesday and Friday. They knew Punk was having his first match, so they tuned in, and you spent $50 on it. Of course, you're going to watch the show from start to finish. You're not going to just watch the Punk match. And by the time you're done, you're like, oh, I know Ruby Soho, and boy, did she get a huge pop. And oh my God, Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson is on this show now, and Adam Cole is on this show now. These are people I like. I'm intrigued, and now I'm going to watch Wednesday.
Yeah,
and that was the hook that they got for all those people that were watching for the first time. All those people that tuned into All Out for the first time. They've never seen any other AEW show before. Now they said, okay, we can see Punk on Wednesday, and we can see Bryan Danielson, and we can see Darby Allin, who I like, and Adam Cole, Bebe, and everybody. And now they're hooked, and they're going to come in on Wednesday, and that's going to be 2 of the hours that they spend on wrestling that week.
Well, and they got to see the tag match. They got to see Miro and Kingston leading off as well. So Miro's somebody that's WWE eyeballs. You got to see MJF and Jericho as well. So like the show was formatted and put together exceptionally well. I think it puts a whole ton of pressure on them in general to continue to deliver. But I think the low key quietest one that I'm most excited about more is Ruby Soho than the two guys.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm excited about that is we've seen men's wrestlers come over from WWE to AEW and be successful. This is the first woman from the women's division, which to this point was an ionized division. They were, when I came back and I first started watching wrestling again, I enjoyed the women's division in WWE more than I enjoyed a lot of the men's stuff. It was much more compelling to me. The performers were fantastic and stuff. This is the first woman that comes over. Not only does she come over, they have her come out as a joker with licensed music. They have her win, and she's right into a title shot. And at the blow off of that, they put her in the ring against Thunder Rosa, who's one of the most talented women on the roster. So I think that brings a pretty strong message to the WWE women's locker room that says, hey, there's opportunity here. So she's the first woman that gets to whisper back to that locker room, hey, this is how things are. And I think it's super, super important.
Let me circle back to that point because I think that's spot on too with that. But Certified Hustler, who's watching the show right now, is proving the point. He says that he actually said he watched NWA 73, and that's how he got exposed to the women's wrestlers from AEW. He tuned into the show, and all of a sudden, he sees Adam Cole. He's really glad that he did. Man, he says, "Stop what you're doing, stand up to your feet, and give a round of applause to your new world champ and real heavyweight champ, Trevor Murdoch." Yes, he was at the NWA shows. He saw all that stuff, and so that's another way that AEW kind of exposed themselves and brought in new fans. And then they saw all this crazy stuff at the pay-per-view. So
for Forbidden Portal, cooperation, collaboration, it works.
Yeah.
There's only one place on the outside looking in when it comes to that stuff.
100%. So yes. So now back to the women's division, which he's brought up because he watched 73. He watched Empower, got exposed to the AEW talent on the NWA show. You brought up Ruby comes over from WWE. Yes, she's whispering back to the locker room now. When she left, all those people were like, oh my God, this is a huge blow to our locker room. So she is well liked. And I listened to Ruby after in the post All Out media scrum. She said she had never had her name chanted before, which I thought, man, that's crazy. You know, she was at WrestleMania. She was at, she's been all over the place, and crowd never got behind her enough to chant her name. But the AEW crowd is so electric. And so, and it's not for a lack of respect. She's always had that. So
I
crazy
can't
moment for her. And I can't
imagine
speak volumes.
I can't imagine what that obviously that takes it to the next level, right? Like she was there for a long time. Yes, she had some injuries and stuff like that. But I can't imagine as a performer being there as long as she did. And then she comes through the curtain at that show and the roof got blown off. I mean, there was pre-chants, right? They were counting down at 15 seconds. The Ruby Soho chant started ahead of time.
Yeah.
If anybody had come through that door, it would have been, they would have gotten a pop for sure. But the fact that it was her and that music hit and it was Rancid and it was like, God, this is peanut butter and jelly. This is chocolate and peanut butter. Like what a great feeling. Because she got to be nervous, right? You're coming through that door for the first time. I don't know. The fact that you got 13,000 or however many were in that building with Chicago going cheering your name, and then you win the thing has got to be.
And I think AEW did the right thing because clearly, I don't want to say clearly, but the news got out, and I don't think it was by accident that the news was out there because they almost needed to. With there's so many people on the open market, they needed to let us know who to cheer for. Because could you imagine the way it would suck all the air out of the room if the chant was for Tessa Blanchard or the Iconics or somebody like that, and then out comes Ruby. So the story was out there. We had great video packages released on Ruby's Twitter feed.
Yep.
And
Yeah, they
came
did
through.
it. They did a really good job presenting it. I agree 100%. I mean, she was the expectation. I thought she was great in the match in the spots that she got. Like, obviously the girl can go. Like, that's not an issue or anything like that. I think she's going to fit into that locker room really, really well, because she's Thunder Rosa size,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of their women's wrestlers, right? You got a
Yep.
couple of bigger gals that are there that are strong and that are top, but for the most part, medium-sized, average-sized girls that can just move, and she's going to bring a lot to that locker room. And then, I think we could see a couple more coming over from the other side at some point too.
All right, so let's pivot. Was the Lucha Bros versus the Young Bucks the best cage match you've ever seen? And it's hard because you got Hell in a Cell, you got War Games, you got those styles. Let's kind of pull them off. Like, take those away and think just regular cage. I've heard people say they can't think of a better cage match. So is it the best one of all time? It's possible.
I thought it was really good. You're shooting at me here because I didn't go. I'd have to look at the history of cage matches,
Sure.
and
I mean, there's
take a
great ones.
serious
You
look
got
at it.
Harley and Flair at Starrcade. You got
Yep,
all kinds
sure.
of like historic cage matches. Even
I think the way that
Cody versus Goldberg.
they shot it really good. They had the one camera in the corner, the one cameraman in the corner, so we're not shooting in between cage and stuff like that. You've got good views. It was a great story. I'm glad they started with the ripping off of the mask. We've seen the mask cost the Lucha Bros the match against them a number of times, so it was good that they didn't get it all the way. I mean, I don't know, like, I cried when his daughter came down after they won
For
the
sure.
belts. Like, that, it's just an awesome moment and a good build, and it was time to move the belts off the Bucks, and Lucha Bros have it, and like, well deserved.
Absolutely.
Phenomenal tag team, and it's it's not even debatable whether or not that's the best tag division in the industry. You can't even have the
Yeah.
conversation, really.
Yeah. Any other match? Like, what was the matches I guess that stuck out most to you on the show in terms of like there was so many moments, right? Eddie Kingston walking through to start the show absolutely set the crowd on fire. CM Punk was going to set the crowd on fire from the beginning. Jon Moxley and Kojima, I was really surprised at how well Kojima was known and cheered for, in the arena. And then Suzuki comes out and it's absolutely bonkers in the place. So
Yeah, so you're dealing with a smart crowd, and a very different crowd, and a crowd that's familiar with going outside of their main brand and looking at other talent from other places. And I think the reverence that Kojima got coming to the ring as somebody who's a past star, and we've seen this with them bringing in Yuji Nagata,
yeah,
as well, because they are Yuji Nagata, Kojima, and now Suzuki kind of are in the same generation of wrestlers for them. This is definitely the sun setting on all of their careers to a degree, although they wrestle pretty late in Japan. Um, it's hard to find something on the card that was bad. The way that they set up the Kingston Miro match, very good. The Baker Statlander match was very good. The Kojima, like, there just wasn't a dud on there. The closest to the dud I felt was the MJF Jericho finish, just because it was
yeah. It took a little air out,
non-standard,
but it was okay.
non-standard. But even the Paul White QT Marshall was fine.
Yeah,
I can't imagine what that show would have been if you try to add Andrade versus Pac in.
yeah. They would have had to cut time from every other match, basically, and
Yeah,
I don't know how you could have done it. So
and I mean, we still had, as good of a show as it was, there's a lot of the locker room that never came through those curtains.
that's true. Yeah,
We didn't get Lance Archer, we didn't get Hangman Page, we didn't get any of the Dark Order. I mean, there's a lot of talent. None of Team Taz. Brian Cage wasn't there. Will Hobbs, Ricky Starks. Like,
yep.
they could have run another pay-per-view with just the people that didn't come out,
Yeah.
and it would have been just fine.
Yeah, no, and they're stacked, and they announced a couple of matches for Dynamite that feature, and Rampage that feature some of these other guys. Pac and Andrade that was kicked down to this Friday. Wednesday we have Malachi Black. He'll be facing Dustin Rhodes. You get the
Malachi
Minoru
Black's
Suzuki.
another one. Like,
Yeah,
Malachi Black didn't come out either. Like,
yeah, freaking great show. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all there. I mean, I'm sure the whole internet is saying that, but it was a great show.
take the surprises out of it and just run the matches by themselves without anybody else showing up. I mean, you can't do it with Ruby, but the rest of the guys showing up, put it way over the top. But in general, you know, I think the CM Punk match was a safe match. I thought that they told a good story. I thought it did what it needed to do as far as Darby goes with the build. It was nice that Sting came out at the end to kind of,
Yeah.
Suck it up, kid. We're going to get through this kind of thing. It was a good choice as far as his opponent goes. Punk looked like normal Punk. I didn't have an issue with the match at all. I thought it was put together well, and yeah, overall, one of the better pay-per-views I've ever watched.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the other stuff that we did though, because you and I, like we talked about, 88 matches, but a lot of those were AEW matches. But we went to AAW Destination Chicago. We went to a whole bunch of GCW shows, including War Games, and we went to and then we went to all the AEW shows. Black Label Pro,
Black Label Pro in there too.
Yeah. So up until this trip, I had never been in the crowd for a 60-minute Broadway. We had Josh Alexander versus Fred Yehi for the AAW Championship. This was on Thursday night at the show. They went 60 minutes, incredible effort. The referee, if you go and watch the AAW show, you can get out and fight. The referee, there is a river of sweat the entire match just running off of him because he's jumping around trying to keep up with these guys as they're wrestling, so they're constantly cradling and stuff like that, and he's having to count all these pinfall attempts, and then they wrestle out into the crowd and all kinds of crap. Crazy times.
Yeah. I didn't know that we were in for a 60-minute Broadway. I don't think anybody in the crowd knew that they were in for a 60-minute Broadway, but not for nothing. You got two athletes that could do a 60-minute Broadway, and they did. It was a great match all over the place. Just a surprise. I'm glad I got to see it. And completely unexpected. And the rest of the show was stacked.
Yeah.
We're in essentially a gymnasium a couple floors up, and hot crowd, stuffed crowd, bunch of people there, familiar faces from the rest of the week. We certainly saw a handful of those folks in the same buildings that we were, so we weren't the only diehards that were going to all the shows, because I don't know, I got to recognize people's masks after a period of time. And, oh, you were there too, that kind of thing. So yeah, we were definitely following around the crowd. And when there's a big pay-per-view and stuff like that, if you like the town it's going to be in, you go a couple of days earlier, you can catch all these indie shows ahead of time, and you're going to see, new talent on the rise, and you're going to see some yesterday's talent as well.
Yeah. So I actually have some comments coming in here about War Games, so I'll switch over to that. But the Certified Hustler, who's watching the show on YouTube right now, is talking about Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors cage matches as some of the best cage matches of all time. Those were War Games, so I was trying to exclude those from the Young Bucks conversation. But when we talk about War Games, you and I saw something absolutely bonkers. It was a War Games match that included light tubes and panes of glass. It was a death match War Games. It had all the crazy characters from GCW. 440 versus MDK. Crazy match.
Yeah, it was insane. So you essentially had War Game style match. So we got a cage on the outside with scaffolding on the end caps. One ring, I'll call the clean ring, only had doors in it. The other ring had light tubes all around the outside of it, light tubes on the inside of it, panes of glass on the inside of it. And then on top of that, I think we certainly got a pizza cutter, and they had these light tubes with the innards of it being basically a broomstick. So you had light tubes taped around the outside, and they were using those to bust on each other. And the scaffolding came into play in what a wild, just an experience that you'll never see ever. Not one that you want to show your kids.
No, this is I don't know if they had any kids in the crowd, but they had about 1,400 people. The building was way past capacity. If a fire marshal had come, they would have shut the whole thing down. It was absolutely crazy. The thing that's most interesting to me about all these GCW shows, the crowd is usually pretty into everything, But when Nick Gage walks out, man, he has a connection with that audience that is unlike anything I've ever seen. He comes out, and it's the way I started the show. He basically says, "Hey, Chicago, where's my gang at?" And it doesn't matter if he's in Chicago or Vegas or Atlantic City or Los Angeles or anywhere. That's his thing that he says, and he gets mobbed from the moment he walks through the curtain till he gets in the ring. There are fans on every side of him, and he just walks around the ring, and it's amazing.
It has an old ECW sort of feel to it as far as that goes. Like, he is their Stone Cold, essentially.
Yeah.
He comes out, the whole place gets lit up, and it's wild. It's something that you got to sit in the crowd to kind of experience and feel. Like, there's an edginess to it because there's some stress and anxiety because this pop is coming and things like that, but there's excitement and enthusiasm too. And yeah, the love for that guy for the crowd is, I don't know, I've never seen it. And I think part of it is because the proximity to everybody is so close. I mean, gosh, he comes through the crowd, he does all the sides, the guy knows how to pop the place. Like, and honestly, in the War Games match, he comes out, he's the last guy in the ring. He comes out with barely any cuts for him. He doesn't,
Yeah.
like, he was kind of the cleanup hitter for this whole thing. You know,
Mhm.
obviously he brought out the pizza cutter because that's kind of his gig and stuff. But like, at the end of the match, he's in the crowd literally 1 foot from us. And he's
Yeah.
pretty clean compared to poor guys like Alex Colon with a bunch of hamburger on his
Oh
shoulder,
yeah.
or Ricky Shane Page, who got launched off of the top of a scaffolding through a table, pane of glass, light tubes, basically anything you could find in the Lowe's section that's like breakable.
Yeah. I nudged during Gage's entrance. I nudged Maggie, my wife, and I said, "Look, if anything happens to this guy, or maybe even if he takes a pin, let's know where the closest exit is to this building." Because that's the only way I can describe it. It was like I wasn't around for the Beatles, right? But I had a feeling that that was the kind of like mob mentality that was in the building for this guy. I can't imagine what it was like when Cardona beat him a few months ago for the championship. I can't believe Cardona got out of there alive. Like, I know
Yeah, I mean,
everything they could find was thrown at him. In this event, there were no bottles. There were no beer bottles or anything like that. But in Atlantic City or wherever it was that the Cardona won, they found him. They had stuff to throw at him.
and I
So
mean, hats off to Lauderdale too, Brett, for booking this match. What a great blow off for this 440 MDK thing with War Games and stuff like that. Then he's smart enough to bring out Matt Cardona is going to do his open challenge.
yeah,
So we get Matt Cardona in the ring, and he's dressed like the Macho King, and everybody hates him. Now, I knew what was going to happen, and it did happen. Now
yeah,
you've got pockets of Matt Cardona fans that are in the crowd too, that are like the crowd of anti-crowd.
yeah.
So they're
It's hard
cheering
to do
him
that.
with woo woo woos and broskies and different things like that. And you got him out here. And who does Brett bring out? Local goof, Frank
The
the
clown.
Clown.
Yep.
Frank comes out, and I'm looking over because I can see Brett, and I'm like shaking my head. I'm like, if this is what you're going to give us after you just gave us the War Games match that you gave us, this is not going to do.
No.
So Cardona pins Frank the Clown in 1 second. Frank manages to cut himself somehow. And out he
Because they were in the
goes.
dirty ring.
They're in the dirty ring. Out he goes. G Raver's music hits, who's a deathmatch guy who had just beaten Jimmy Lloyd the night before in an insane match. We walked out because it was 2:30 in the morning when we left, and they had to go another 40 minutes, and we're old. So G Raver comes out with druids, and the druids surround the inside of the ring in the clean ring for Cardona. G Raver walks in, noses him up, and then leaves. And the druids start to leave. And who
Except
comes
for
out of the
one.
hood but it's Moxley.
Yeah.
And if there was a bigger crowd pop than Nick Gage, it was the reveal of Jon Moxley, who's another person loved by GCW. Now, that build to Moxley Gage has been going on for months now.
Yeah.
And Moxley crushes Cardona. Cardona gets dragged out. Moxley's the new champion. And then Gage comes back out And the next big event in Atlantic City, we're going to see Gage versus Moxley for the title.
Absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, I want to just mention, because as this video is being, our video here is being broadcast live, Certified Hustler, who was providing some comments before, he's continued. Go ahead and keep commenting, man. I'll pull some in when I can. But he's all over the AEW show. So I'm glad to see his excitement and theories and stuff going on out there. So yeah, Jon Moxley wins the GCW championship. I would say, you were mentioning that if there was a bigger pop, it was that Moxley pop. I think the fans are now confused. They want to cheer for both guys. Moxley being the big star who still gives them, a little bit of time, and shine and whatnot. And you have Nick Gage, who is their hero, the hero of the promotion. So it's crazy. I think they're confused. What
does Moxley do to pay tribute to all those people? He comes out for his match against Kojima at the pay-per-view, and he's got a GCW hoodie on.
Yep.
Big rub.
And what did we hear? GCW chants. This is
GCW
a promotion.
chants in Chicago.
This is a promotion that I can't really say only. They drew 1,400 people into that building. They were turning people away selectively, but they could have brought a few more people in. But so it was only a portion of the all-out crowd that was there that were GCW fans. But the GCW chants were audible, and you could even hear them during the broadcast. I think if I knew they were there, so I could hear them, but they were big enough to where there was nobody in the arena that wasn't like, wow, GCW chant. So
right, yeah, no, well played by them. I mean, it's a very intelligent promotion for being an indie promotion, and they do a really good job, and they're unique.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That said, I still want to talk. I mean, man, we saw the Powers of Pain.
We did see the Powers of Pain. I didn't think that would ever have been on my bucket list, yet here it is. And so we're going to get a 4-on-4 the night before at 3 Cups Stuffed. And naturally, the 4-man tag team is going to be, we've got to have face paint to be on the team. We have Warhausen, which is going to be Warhorse and Danhausen. And then we're going to have Barbarian and Warlord come out. And that's our 4-man squad. Then
MDK.
We're going to get MDK, which is going to be Nick Gage and the Second Gear crew. So we're going to see Justice, Manser, and AJ Gray.
Yeah.
And we don't know how this is going to go home, because if Gage takes the pin, the whole place is going to riot or anything like that. How are they going to wrap this up? And they wrap it up by so they bring out Ricky Shane Page for 440 at the beginning, kind of in the middle of the show. He cuts a promo. We're here to stay. We're going to crush War Games. So you're like, okay, well, that's enough. Well, don't they come out in the middle of this match to disrupt it, and all 8 of the guys end up getting over on 440 when they come out and do the beating and clear them out. And that, there's no finish to the match, but there's, an appreciation there, and it was just crazy to see that.
I know it was first just the fact that Warlord and Barbarian are still active enough to get in the ring. Now they weren't extraordinarily active. They were basically getting hit and not selling anything. That was kind of the shtick, because they are who they are. They're enormous. So it was fun to see them. Warlord clearly looked like he got into a little something before the show. He was a little dazed and confused. If you know what
Warlord was definitely feeling good with himself for sure.
But yeah, no. So all in all, I guess what I'm saying when we talk about all these things is that we went to Chicago for AEW. We know that all these other promotions pile on to the big weekends. So we're like, okay, we're going to see some other stuff. And we got AEW. We bought our tickets to AEW. What did we get? A 60-minute Broadway. That was kind of like not something that was on my bucket list, because what are the chances that you're going to see that today? I guess pretty good now that Josh Alexander's working.
And, we also got to see Davey Richards versus Daniel Garcia. And we got to see Ace Austin in the ring as well.
And then we went to GCW. We saw War Games. We saw the Barbarian, the Warlord. We went to a show called Effie's Big Gay Brunch. and you do the math.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we saw the pay-per-view of all pay-per-views
Yep.
for AEW.
Yeah,
So
just a wild weekend.
excellent weekend. We're going to take a quick break. I do have some more stuff we want to talk about this morning. We'll probably go on a little bit of an abbreviated run through the G1 Climax this year, but stick with us and we'll be right back. If you love the Daily Wrestling News Show, then I want to tell you how you can support us. First, check out bodyslamclothes.com. You can get a variety of shirts for just $20, and all of them come in the super soft style, and the price you see includes all sizes and shipping. Get 10% off 2 or more shirts with the promo code SHIRTS10. Go to bodyslamclothes.com right now to check it out. And join Joey Jarzenka, Ian Schreier, and Rob DeLuca on Monday nights for the Primetime Rundown. They take you through the world of sports, and the show kicks off each Monday at 7 p.m. on the Eastern Observer. And each Tuesday, Al Carl hosts the Essential Wrestling Podcast alongside John Smith, myself, John DeConnie, and Gary Mahaffey. It's another week of updates and highlights in the world of wrestling. Hear our analysis on who we think is going to win the week's matches. Coverage begins at 6 p.m. on the Eastern Observer. And Pro Wrestling Pick'em. It's a place where you can join or host a Pick'em League to test your predictive skills in the world of pro wrestling. Create an account and join a league now at ProWrestlingPick'em.com so you can play against your friends or play against the universe. And the Body Slam Brigade newsletter, currently going out to over 4,200 people each Friday. It consolidates all the top stories in professional wrestling into a quick-to-read email written by me for you for free. Sign up now at bodyslambrigade.com. And of course, this show, the Daily Wrestling News Show. We're here every day, Monday through Thursday, and occasionally on Friday. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or watch us live on Facebook and YouTube at 10 a.m. This is the Daily Wrestling News Show, and we thank you for your support. All right, we are back. And so we talked about the crazy trip to Chicago. That was awesome. Yes, to the comments that are coming in, the Powers of Pain were at the GCW show. That's where you could see them. So, all right. So the G1 Climax is the biggest tournament from my estimation, from the point I'm sitting at. It seems like it's the biggest tournament in all of wrestling. And it's always on Japanese soil. It plays out over about 20 days, and it starts on September 18th. You've got 2 blocks of wrestlers, an A block and a B block, 10 wrestlers in each. It's round robin. They all wrestle each other. They tally up points at the end to determine the winner of each block, and then they compete in a final. So that's the ground rules for the G1 Climax. We got the reveals for who's in the blocks, and not surprisingly, Travis, because of COVID protocols and COVID when you're going to Japan, you got to sit out for 10 days before you do anything. There are no Americans on the list. Nobody that lives outside of Japan is on the list this year. So in some cases, I guess that's a little disappointing because you don't have the breadth of people in there. We've had Jon Moxley within the last 2 years was in here. No Jay White this year because they're going to be busy running shows in America too. So no Will Ospreay. So the list is not maybe what we wanted, but
Yeah, it's so no surprises on the list. Now, obviously with the talent leaving, they knew what these blocks were going to look like, a month or so ago, because they said, Jay, you can head over, Will, you can head over, you're going to do these different things. It's too bad because I think when we talked about the New Japan Cup, my pick for winning G1 this year was Jay White. And we're not going to see Jay. We're not going to see Will. I mean, for English-speaking wrestlers, we've basically got God, Zack Sabre Jr., and Jeff Cobb.
yeah.
And that's kind of it, So it's going to go back to the more traditional Japanese wrestler sense. It's a little bit of a letdown for me. Like, I really wanted there to be some surprises. Like, I would have loved if somebody from AEW had made it over there, but it's going to be more traditional, and this is kind of their thing. So, I'm less excited about it than I've been in years past.
Yeah, me too. I have to say that I know, and I blame COVID really, because I believe the forbidden door being open, or whatever you want to say. Look, New Japan has been working with AEW. They've been working with Ring of Honor. I'm sorry, not Ring of Honor. They have in the past worked
Impact.
with Ring of Honor, but Impact more recently with Chris Bay and things like that. So I feel like the G1 is open in the future to having all kinds of different people in it. This year, I think we're let down because of COVID and the just strict protocols that are in Japan. You can't get people over there. Now, having said that, there's going to be a lot of good matches here. You have some people in each block that are destined to not win a single match, or win a couple upsets or whatever. So you got those guys that are at the bottom, and then you've got a competitive set of like about 4 people in each block. So in A block, you have Shingo Takagi, Tomohiro Ishii, Naito, Zack Sabre Jr., Toru Yano, Kenta, Great Khan, Tonga Loa, Kota Ibushi, and Yujiro Takahashi. So there are, in A block, Shingo, Naito, Ibushi, and Kenta, I would say, are kind of like the top of that block. And as it turns out, the last day that they're wrestling in block competition, Kenta is facing Ibushi. So it's probably going to come down to those guys being toward the top end of the block.
So I didn't know that was a schedule, and I picked some guys that I thought could get out of the block, and the 2 names that I have in A block are Ibushi and Kenta. So
there you go. Now, Ibushi has won the tournament the last 2 years.
Yes.
So this would be like a huge credential for him to win for the 3rd year in a row. He just had his first match in months, though, over the weekend, and he lost to Hiroshi Tanahashi in about 15 minutes. And it was, I guess, I was not able to see it because I was in Chicago watching the Powers of Pain and War Games and all that crap. But apparently a very emotional situation. He was smaller because he hadn't been able to work out. He had aspirational pneumonia, so he was down and out for a long time. So he is back. Hopefully he can get himself in really good condition because the G1 requires it. And then, like you said, I think Kenta and Ibushi are on the top end of that. If I had to pick a sleeper in here, it's Great Khan because he's improved a lot, and he's fighting Naito on the last night. Naito has been among the top of the division for the last several years.
So you took my sleeper pick too.
Okay, there you go. So Certified Hustler, does AEW work with G1? So this is New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they do work with AEW, but there's not going to be any AEW people in the G1 Climax tournament. But of course, New Japan Pro Wrestling has sent Minoru Suzuki over to wrestle Jon Moxley this Wednesday.
And Moxley had their title on stateside soil for over a year. Lance Archer had their belt. So there's definitely collaboration and cooperation. I mean, Chris Jericho had a number of matches over there as the Painmaker before AEW was really a thing. So they've definitely shared talent in a number of Hikuleo that we saw as a New Japan Strong guy on AEW programming. So yeah, there's definitely some guys that go back and forth for sure. Kenta was over here and wrestled AEW.
Yep. Yeah, and he says, I wish New Japan Pro Wrestling and NWA would start a relationship. I don't think that's out of the question.
I agree.
It's definitely something that could happen. In the B block consists of Hiroshi Tanahashi, Kazuchika Okada, Hiroki Goto, Taichi, Sanada, Tama Tonga, Jeff Cobb, Evil, Chase Owens, and Yoshihashi. Why don't this time I throw it to you and say, who do you think your favorites are in the block?
So I got Tanahashi and Okada as my 2 favorites in the block here. Tanahashi, because I don't know, it feels like every year we try to say the story of the last year of Tanahashi is going to be here and yada yada yada. So like he's really hard not to call out that they won't give him one more shot at it. And Okada's just, I don't know what his G1 record is, but it's pretty incredible. And for my spoiler, another United Empire guy, I got Jeff Cobb as a potential for a spoiler because he's been getting a pretty good rub lately. They just had him beat Okada. So there's kind of an inner story that's going on there. He's not a traditional pick either.
Well, no. But the interesting thing is you have, and I think in this one there's a bunch of sleepers. Okay, Sanada has made the finals many times, including last year, and he's facing Evil on the last night.
Oh, sure.
So Sanada and Evil is a former world champion or heavyweight champion.
Former LIJ members.
So there's a story there, even if it's not a block final, like it's not going to, determine the winner. You've got a story that's built in there. It could very well be the match that, makes the difference. Now, you also have Cobb and Okada, who have a rivalry. And as we just said, you have one that's a favorite for the whole tournament, and you have one that is a sleeper pick for the tournament. So you have Cobb in there too, facing Okada on the last night. Maybe that's going to be the match that determines who wins the whole thing. And then you've got Tanahashi facing Tai Chi. And Tai Chi is one of those guys where like we're always just about ready to pull the trigger on Tai Chi, and we pull it back. And what's interesting this year, so that field looks like it has about 6 guys that could potentially be competing at the end of the tournament for the block final, to make the finals. So what's interesting is you got the 6 guys. It's pretty wide. It's pretty wide open there. I forget my point was, and then you have Wrestle Kingdom. They announced is going to be a 3-night event. So they've been doing 2 nights the last 2 years, and this year they're extending it to 3, January 4th and January 5th. Usually the winner of this tournament gets a shot at Wrestle Kingdom, and it used to be a 1-night event. It was the main event. Now they've got three different nights, so it's hard to say what they're going to do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they decide to format that.
Yeah. So all that's crazy. Let's see. So Certified Hustler continuing. As a new fan coming over to AEW, I'm more of a pro wrestling fan than an entertainment wrestling fan. Do they do storylines that match up with their matches? Because that's what I'm interested in. I think you found the right place.
Yeah. So New Japan does a phenomenal job of actually telling the story in the ring. Probably the best you're going to see, other than one-offs occasionally. Ring psychology is a big deal for them because in tournaments like this, you have a lot of face versus face and heel versus heel. But what you will see is inevitably one of the faces will work the match as a heel at some point. And there's a lot of build to it. You don't see as many in-ring promos. Sometimes they close the show that way. But what you see is afterwards in their media scrums in the locker room is where you get to see their promos after they've finished their match. So it's a different way of telling the story. The story's told in the ring more often than not. And for a classic or traditional wrestling fan, it speaks to your heart when that's what you're looking for.
And I think I think his question was actually geared at AEW. And I think he's fine there. He's fine there too. I think the storylines are very much intertwined with what's going on. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to be happy if you watch.
Yeah, you found a good home for sure.
Yep. Okay, a couple of points. I just want to make sure that everybody sees that he has also said that we are the best wrestling heads in the business, which is
I'll take
perfect. Thank you. A couple of news items before we get out of here. MLW, Major League Wrestling Fusion Alpha, debuts on 9/22. That's going to be a quick mini-series on YouTube, 7 p.m. on Wednesdays that bridges us to the next season of MLW. So that'll be fun. We have in Philly, we have the big Hammerstone Fatu match that's coming up. So that's the one that MLW has been building to for like over a year. So that match is coming.
Yeah, and I'm excited too. There's a handful of guys that are lucha guys that we've seen on these GCW loops and stuff like that. Both Aramis and Era's Strange, which are 2 of the stronger luchas. If you haven't had a chance to watch those guys, they are a treat in the ring.
That's right. Yep. And then on the Ring of Honor side, I want to mention that the Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view is this Sunday, and they are crowning a new women's champion. They have not had one in a couple of years. And in the finals are down to Miranda Alizé and Roxy. Roxy, 17 years old, trained by Booker T. So very fun final there. And then NXT tonight, we have MSK versus Lorcan and Birch for the tag titles. Zoe Stark and Io Shirai versus Casey Catanzaro and Caden Carter for the tag titles. So 2 tag title matches tonight. Mei Ying making her in-action debut. And then Ember Moon versus Kaylee Ray, which is a fun match too. So NXT is got a good card tonight. And the other thing that's fun to watch is all the news about NXT going through their changes and stuff. This is the last taped show before the big reveal of whatever it's going to be next week. So
with the new Nickelodeon logo.
Yeah, with the new Nickelodeon logo. Or the paint spatter. The Bob Ross version.
It's fun.
So all right, I think we have answered all of the questions from the chat. I think we have covered down on most of the wrestling news. We didn't even cover what's going on in the world of Monday Night Raw and stuff like that, WWE. We'll get to that probably tomorrow with John Smith on the show, and all will be set right with the world. So, for that said, Travis, anything you want to take us home with?
No, I mean, a great week of wrestling we got to see. We were lucky enough to see that. I'm really excited about this AEW momentum, and it's a good time to be a wrestling fan overall. If you enjoy good wrestling, you got a lot that you can watch.
Yeah, it's a great time. It is a great time. All right. Well, for Travis, I'm Ryan. We will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. John Smith will be here. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you then.